Ibrahim Shukralla, do you agree with this assessment? And we have seen, and it's not just Israel and Palestine, we've seen in Afghanistan recently, a peace deal does not always translate into peace, but it's definitely a start, and you have to start somewhere.
Well, I think it's gonna definitely boost the chances, and it's providing more diplomatic tools, more policy options. We're talking about a fresh dialogue now. So we have all these things on a negotiating table that were not exist before. And this is what the UAE has been, saying from after the Accords. And I totally agree with that, because if we're going to use the old methods with an old mentality, which it always failed. So how would this gain progress if you're going to use the same thing, every single time? I think the Abraham Accords was a historic event, and obviously the UAE and obviously Palestine will always be cornerstone of the UAE's foreign policy, and I'm sure most of the foreign policy of most of the Arab states. And I see the profitability of the Abraham Accords for all of the countries that normalize ties with Israel. You just look at the UAE, for example. Just during COVID, 130,000 Israeli tourists visited the UAE, and this is during COVID. We're talking about dozens of MOUs, agreements between the two countries, and just the bilateral trade between Dubai and Israel, and that's only Dubai, I'm not talking about the UAE as a whole. In 5 months, it hit $270 million. When we're talking about Morocco, the US recognized the Moroccan Sahara, which always been, which always Morocco regarded as a national security matter. And we're talking, if we're going to talk about Sudan, the US lifted sanctions. And the same thing could be said about Bahrain. Many MOUs and agreements been signed between the two countries. So this is a big win for the region, not just for Israel, not just for the UAE, not just for the US. It's for the region as a whole.